I think a thriving artist in this day and age is one that's able to make a body of work that they can stand behind without having to kind of compromise to late stage capitalism and maybe what they think the markets will bear. I think that there's a huge thing that is a blessing in disguise. And I've gone over this with people. Having a day job that pays for all the bills gives you the freedom to make what you really want. And I think that I didn't realize how blessed I was. The fact that, like, every day I sit down and paint whatever I want. Any shows I want to do a year from now, I'm not worried about if the market will bear this or if this is on trend. I think a thriving artist is one that doesn't have to compromise their ideas for what the market will bear. Like you said in the podcast earlier, essentially, your market or the people who will buy your paintings are out there. So it may not make sense to you, like that weird painting of the guy. If you gave it to a gallery or a market, they may be like, I can't sell this. And that is like holding you back, because then maybe you'll start thinking of that when you're painting, and then like you're putting little shackles on yourself. So I think the blessing that you have to have as an artist to say is that the fact that you get to have freedom and creating a brand online and being on content creation, you really are the master of your own ship. And I think that if you can figure that out, you're thriving and you're going to create a body of work that when you're dead and gone, not only should you be proud of it, but society is better because you didn't have to bend to what you thought everyone else wanted.
Fork in the road between thriving and starving artists is where I'm at. I really like your work. I can't eat lights. I need new heights. Just want to make a living doing the work I love. Throw the notion of a starving artist out the window. Take the elevator down to the ground floor and jump on it some more.
Hello and welcome to Fork in the Road. Today we are lucky enough to have Alexander Notarangelo here speaking with us. He is a hyper-realistic oil painter who has a lot to say on Instagram. He's very prolific over there and absolutely loving his content. And I thought maybe he could have a lot to say on the podcast as well. So welcome, Alexander. How are you doing today?
Excellent. Thanks for the invite.
Now, how do you? I'm fascinated with this hyperrealism thing, and also the fact that you are self-taught. How in the world do you self-train yourself to like get to the level of quality which you're putting out?
So, my background is actually a carpenter. So, I kind of approach art from a tradesman point of view. So, when I started to paint, which was essentially during the start of COVID, when we had nothing to do, we were locked in, but I worked at a hospital. So, I was still working, but then weekends, you're just stuck here. And I started to paint, and then I kind of like was always gravitating towards like portraiture and high end stuff and like hyper realism. But I found it very like challenging, and I kind of was like, all right, if I can get to that level, I can be the best painter. So I was like, all right, that's the goal. The goal has to be a hyper realist painter. So then I'm like, okay, how do I approach this? So I essentially looked at it from a perspective of a carpenter, where I was like, all right, well, you have to understand the basics. So I started from the beginning being like, let's figure out color theory. I could always draw very well. My eyes are really good for math, like for angles and stuff like that. So transposing images has always been very easy for me. It was only the color theory and like the movement of oil that I had to figure out over this time. So for me, it was very easy to kind of like use what I learned in carpentry and just try to fit art into that little box that would work. And I created a system of just doing 8 by 10 paintings. And I found that I could turn those over every 2 to 3 weeks. So my window of doing like 26 paintings happened in a year. So I found that like if I just follow the same pattern, every painting was getting better until the point where I hit hyperrealism, where it's very easy now. Like I could overpaint to like a picture and make it like pretty dead on. Most of my paintings I tend to stop I could keep going, but I go, it's enough. Like, just
Yeah.
leave it alone. So that was my
Yeah.
approach, and I think that it served me well for trying to figure it out like on your own without any classes.
Yeah. And do you have like several paintings on the go at once? Because I am not an oil painter. I know very little about it because you have to build up layers, don't you? You work in layers and build it up. So have you got several on the go at once that you're working on? Or
Yeah, most times I have, let me think right now, I have 7 open. So I live in an
yeah,
apartment that has like radiant heaters and it makes the apartment super dry. And what's great about that is like it takes about a day or two for a layer to dry the way I paint. So that I'm always cascading the painting within 2 days of itself so that I'm always able to rework areas and I don't have this huge like long window of it drying. So kind of like where I live is the reason I can paint so quickly and such have a high turnover rate. But most of the time, yeah, I'm running like 7 paintings at any given time and they're just running 7 days a week. I just keep by the time I come back in a week, everything's dry and you're on to the next layer.
and at what point did you realize like so you're doing these paintings, you set yourself this challenge. Um, well, I mean, was that, I suppose that's mainly out of boredom of COVID and you wanted to do something. But
Yeah.
at what point did you realize that you could start? You felt confident enough to share them online, or at what point did you do that?
So I actually had like a really big TikTok account during COVID. I had like 30,000 followers on there, and I essentially was doing the same thing I'm doing now, just less refined. And I found success that way, so that I kind of like had a backing from the beginning where people were like, oh, this is interesting. He's like learning how to paint. I was showing paintings nonstop because I was like just painting so much. But I think what kind of gave me the confidence was, and the confidence I still have now, I'm and this is not like a egomaniac thing, but I'm always like my favorite painter. Like I like other painters, but I always like really
Yeah,
like what I paint. So I'm always like really excited to show stuff and really even when it's bad, I'm like hyper aware that it's bad, but I also know that it has like some like humble goodness to it. So then like when I put it online, I just had a good reaction and I was like, "Oh, like I don't have to be perfect right now. I can just kind of like start putting it out there." And I saw the return on investment because people were interested. So it kind of like created this weird dopamine loop for me where I was like,
yeah.
even though I was learning, the people were still coming in to see it, which kind of makes you want to keep doing it, right?
So why did you stop that account? Because I did actually look for you on TikTok, and because I heard that you were on TikTok, and I thought I'll go and check your old videos out, and I couldn't find you.
Oh,
I've got a fresh account with nothing on it, and some very muscly dude. But that could be you. I don't know. um, yeah.
maybe I
So
used to go to the gym
so
a lot. Yeah, who knows?
so why did you decide to close that up?
So unfortunately, I was in kind of a toxic relationship, a great relationship, but I had like she had an issue with social media and she had an issue with me being constantly making content, with constantly being on all the time and having to film and having to be like almost at your not fans, I don't want to say fans, but as like you're just like you're at their disposal. You have to answer questions and comment and like be on.
Yeah.
And I think that she's the type of woman who kind of just didn't understand it or didn't understand what I was trying to do. So it became a rift and I kind of also was going through some pretty heavy mental health stuff back then where it was like weighing on me like being seen all the time and kind of always having to be like posting and being this like happy person painting and trying to like create this facade that almost wore me down. And so with that plus her just not liking it, I had to take a break from it and I deleted it, which
Yeah.
was a terrible idea
Yeah.
because it was like it's hard to grow that big. Um, but it all happens for a reason. I think that I had to like take a step away. I took a year off from social media where I was just painting for myself. And I had to like because I started online, like I just started painting from the beginning, showing everyone. So you never know, like, am I just doing this because I like a fan base, or am I painting because I truly love painting? That was the question. So the year off was kind of a way for me to like take a step back, sit with these paintings, paint them, and just be like my own audience to see if I like it. And that whole year was like,
Yeah.
you know, the full circle of me understanding my role and like what I have to give online and where I make lines in the sand now where I stop and how I can manage my mental health as well as be present like for an audience that wants to see me succeed and make things.
It's like a real double-edged sword with a social media thing, because also like filming yourself. I was talking to Alex a bit, and like, yeah, I was trying to convince him that the act of filming your artwork, or could be art in itself, but then he came back with, well, he came back with a thing of, but filming your art changes the art, because then you're
Mhm.
performing while you're creating the art. So like,
Yeah.
it's difficult to find that space where you can create your art and just be in the zone, be it just you and the art. Um, but by the same token, you've got to sell your art to the world, get exposure, if you want to keep making a living. So yeah, that's an interesting thing. And I like the idea of you sharing from the beginning as well. Like that's a really interesting thing. I think that's where a lot of people could relate to someone starting something new from fresh, and follow the journey all the way along. And I know you're super critical of your work sometimes. What do you look for? What is good art in your eyes, when in terms of your art and in terms of other people's art? What do you look for?
That's such a great question. I am super critical. I am absolutely like my own like worst critic. I have like this thing inside of me where it's like I paint, I have the idea, I execute it. I do like so much lead up that people don't realize. Like I'm drawing, I'm doing takeoffs where I'm doing color corrections and making sure that everything's correct and layout. So there's a lot of like lead into a painting for me to be like mentally committed to doing the painting. I have to like really love the image I'm working on. But sometimes it misses and sometimes the idea falls flat or I kind of am in a day where I think it's interesting and then by the time I'm into it, I'm like, I'm not into it. So there's like this constant dialogue that's going through my head at all times to kind of be like, is this good? Is this worth the time? Because don't forget, like, I have two kids, I have a full time job, all my free time goes here. So I found that if I don't really hone in on why I'm painting this or what the project entails and what I want it to be, I find that like it'll ruin my entire uh like mentality for like painting. It'll ruin the whole idea of painting because it is by that time poisoned in my own brain. So I have to be super critical all the time. But as far as like what I find interesting, like there's painters that I truly love who are like doing high end work. But there's also people who are doing super loose stuff. I don't know. There's like this weird. I've explained it in a video where it's like a rope in my chest, and some things just pull me towards that painting. There's painters that I like that are abstract, and there's painters that are hyper realist. I don't just like realism, but there's a je ne sais quoi to like a brushstroke to like an understanding of color composition. And I'm really good at seeing the bullshit behind paintings when people are painting just from a color palette. Like they'll pick a color palette and they'll like do an abstract thing. And what you're seeing or what you're attracted to in that painting is a balanced color palette. You're not actually into the painting. So I have a really fine eye. I think Rick Rubin said that. Like he just has this internal, I know what's good. And I lean into
Hmm.
it and I when I see it, I know it. And like I've done paintings where I thought it was it and it's been dog shit. So I kind of like I tell people when you start painting, you should also be very aware of doing bad work because if you think everything's great, you're not
Yeah,
going to grow. Like every painting I've ever done on this wall, I can show you three things wrong on every single one of them.
yeah.
Nothing I've ever done has been perfect.
That one, speaking of what you call dog shit, is that painting with the candle, the person looking through
Yeah,
through the, beautifully lit with his candle, and I
yeah.
think it's beautifully done. And I'm just wondering, is it because it doesn't fit in with your style or where you think your journey is going? What makes that, in your words, dog shit?
So that painting was it's a listen, it's funny because it's in my room and I never sold it. It just exists in my. I have to see it every morning, and every time I look at it, it's not that it's like not done well. It's just like it feels like a low. It feels like low hanging fruit with a good execution. And that is like again when I say like the same thing when there's abstract that's a palette and less of an idea, I'll see that it's that. To me, that's a prime example of there's figurative realism that is low hanging fruit. Let's also say when people do the painting of like when there's honey or like they're in water, like those are low hanging paintings to me. Those are really easy. You're just kind of flexing the understanding of color and light. And with that, you don't know who the person is in the candle. Obviously, it's me. There's no narration for what the importance is of that person being lit up. Is it an important person? When you look back on like Vermeer and all these painters that had candlelit, right? There was a religious motif. There was an illumination of thought. There was a book lit. Like there's a reason for the candle to be lit. There's a reason for the actor behind the candle to be present. And when I see that painting, it's not that it's a bad painting. Like it's strong, but it lacks a fully fleshed out thought process, which is again what I go back to the idea is like now as I move forward through painting, I really kind of want to flesh out ideas in a larger sense. Like I approach paintings now a year in advance and I pose a question and I'm slowly chipping away at what I want that answer to be. And then I find the idea for the painting in that discussion with myself rather than just, oh, I'm going to paint a candle with a person behind it. Like it, it falls flat and it just
Okay.
becomes a stale image.
Just a quick intermission to say that the Fork in the Road podcast has a Patreon as well, where you get a whole bunch of special things. You get an extended hour-long advert-free things like you get to ask the podcast guests questions. You get a blog where I deep dive things which, you know, might help make you successful and me successful because I'm learning along the way too. You can also chat with me one-on-one and talk about your art business and make it work together. Back to the interview.
I think with exhibitions now as well, I think there might be another opportunity in the digital space, especially like, you know, thinking from times of COVID where you couldn't actually get into a gallery, is you know, maybe artists can set up all their paintings as they would in an exhibition in their studio if their studio is big enough, and do like an online live or even a video where you're walking around the gallery and you're explaining like, you know, each painting as you would in an exhibition opening or something like that, just to give people some context. I'm just wondering if there's some kind of like, I don't know, virtual gallery or gallery opening that you could do to kind of like counteract that. Like, no one's going to give me a show. I'll make one myself.
Yes.
Damn you know.
that's that's essentially where we're at right now. So I have an idea for Digital Dark Age, which is like this is the last week for painting. The last week that I finished the robot is this week. I only have like 3 things left to do on it, and then everything is done, and then it dries, and then I start varnishing. So my kind of idea for that is the same thing you just said, where it's like, all right, if I can't show it, how fitting it is actually to show Digital Dark Age online? How do we create um this body of work to be viewed online in the sense of that? So like I agree with you, there's ways you could do like a walking tour, which would be funny, like in my apartment, because I have like a gallery wall in my like kitchenette. It would be funny if like I
Yeah,
hired someone for like the lidar, but like you could walk through my apartment and then I'm like on the toilet or something funny, like you walk too far
yeah, yeah,
past, like there's a lot of
yeah,
funny things you can do with it that's like would create a good kind of energy. I also have this other idea where it's like when the launch happens to go on every single app and constantly post it, like YouTube Shorts, LinkedIn,
yeah,
Bumble, Tinder, like just post it on wherever the eyes are online. You post the
yeah,
entire
yeah,
show. And the idea is that like the digital show, if you put it out there in all the channels, it'll actually people no matter what will have to see it. So you force eyes on the work that way. So like you said, not
yeah.
having gallery space forces you to think, how do I get around this? Like COVID's here. How do we show the work? So there's
Yeah.
interesting ideas to play with here, which they're not. Listen, when you don't get into places or when I get no's to things, I don't ever stop. I just go, okay, I cross it off of my list that I make, and I just find another way to do it. And if it only exists online and it only exists on my channel, that's still people looking at it. Like 8,000 people following me is still more than they'd come into my apartment to see it. So,
Yeah. And digital dark age would be a really good one to do it with too, considering the subject matter, I think.
oh yeah.
With the posting of your work, now I know you're just on Instagram. Is there a reason why you're you've committed to Instagram and Instagram only?
So I actually had a conversation with my son about this today. So the way that I've kind of like petitioned myself to get back into making content the way I was when I was on TikTok was when you're doing multi-tiered content on like multiple platforms, you better have like a steady rhythm of how you make your videos, how you edit your videos, and how you want it to look. If I was on multiple platforms, I think I would have been overwhelmed by this point because it's a lot to edit and like make the videos and like post it and respond. And I respond to people don't realize this. Like I like and respond to almost 95% of all the comments that are ever on my like I'll answer DMs. I'm on it. I try to respond to everyone. Anyone asks me a deep question. I talk to people about suicide. Like I try to be very present in this. So my whole idea was, all right, if I can like get the machine running and we get the followers and we get the videos honed in so that the lighting's right and the editing is right. Once that all makes sense, which it has now, the next question is how do we move this to YouTube Shorts? How do we move this to TikTok? And like there's little things that'll have to change in my editing process to cut out like bad words and like 'cause Instagram lets you get away with a little bit of like gray area where other apps won't.
Mm,
But the next
mm,
step is to essentially reestablish what I'm doing on Instagram, on Reels, on YouTube as well as TikTok. But I kind
mm.
of wanted to have a catalog of content so that I wasn't
Yeah,
fighting. So now I have like a good catalog of like 2 months worth of content so that I can
yeah,
post new stuff on Instagram. I can put everything can be different. So I don't like it when you're on multi platforms and you see the same video. To me,
yeah.
that's
Okay.
exhausting. So I'm interested in
Mm.
doing it. I think I just wanted it to be refined enough that it was a brand that I was confident putting like back out there again.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely makes easier for focusing on the platform. But I'm nervous for you because you swear a lot and and you say what you're thinking. I'm just going, if Instagram just shut you down, man, all that
Yeah.
stuff is just gone. And what I mean, because I post on multi platforms for the podcast and for my
Mhm.
art, and I use software to do that, and it does make it very easy-ish. But I know what you mean about some platforms. Like, I mean, even TikTok, I posted a piece of artwork which in a carousel, one of the pieces of artwork had a noose in it, and on TikTok, that was like instantly got a mark against my name for having suicide in my thing,
Yep.
and it's an artwork. And it's not even
Yeah.
about suicide.
Yeah.
They haven't even looked at the artwork. Like a human hasn't even looked at the thing. So
Yeah.
I mean, that scares me when an algorithm can just decide
Oh yeah.
on
I
something in your content and just go, no, that's a black mark against your name.
I play a dangerous game
Yeah,
on
have you actually been flagged for anything?
I the only thing I got flagged for recently was the boob one I just posted. That I put that on trial reels and it got 2 views and then it was taken down. So, but I thought it wouldn't catch it because it was like in the mouse cursor. But I guess it was like real enough to look like a tit, so they flagged it. So I think that if I go to the other platforms,
Right.
and that painting is funny. Like people don't realize what that
Yeah.
painting is, which is like again, it'll be explained when I do the whole show. But essentially, that painting, that boob that's in that cursor, that's a Windows like
Yeah.
96 or 98 background. And that cursor, that breast that's inside of there, was the woman who did the first pornography website. And the idea is like, no matter where we were going on the internet, it was always going to lead to porn. Like that woman started the first thing and it follows. That's like the beginning of it. And now when I ask people like what they use the internet for, pornography is like
Right.
one of three answers. So it's like, it's a thing that we don't talk about, but is so prevalent in everyone's use of the internet. So the idea is like that painting is the direction the mouse is pointing the direction we're going, even if we don't want it to. There's the mouse has it in its like in its cursor. So, but it gets flagged. So you have to like. I think the
Yeah.
multi-platform thing, you have to be careful. I'll have to re-edit in a different way.
Yeah. Yeah. Possibly. And so one thing I've noticed as well, in terms of posting regular schedule, like I've found like if I'm posting a regular schedule, my views start to progress. If I miss a day or miss a post, it's like I get penalized for about a week or something.
100%.
And another thing I notice is another thing I notice is which I think might be good for you personally is because I'm going out to 6 platforms with my videos. Some days, like Instagram will not perform very well at all, but then YouTube Shorts will just like they'll turn the algorithm tap on YouTube Shorts, and it will just like go crazy there. And so and there seems to be no rhyme or reason in a way sometimes because my content is very similar. It's discussing discussing art. I don't know if it's a hashtag or a keyword or something that they've picked up on and just go, okay, we'll give this video a go for a little while. But yeah, I if I was you, I'd definitely consider looking at some other platforms as well, because I'm worried if giving all your energy and time to one
Oh
platform can
yeah.
be dangerous, I think.
I totally agree with that. And I think that you touched on something that like sometimes the algorithm clicks and sometimes it doesn't. What I found was you have to really approach content like with a sales kind of perspective. If you really want your content to do good, you need to have that 3-second hook. And that's like you can't mess with that hook any other way. And I think that I touched on this once with a video where I'm talking about the girls that are turning around with a painting, and like we saw that they did really well, and we thought that the 3-second hook was I'm excited to see the painting. That's what everyone thinks it is. The 3-second hook is that's a really hot girl, I'll sit and see what she did. And I think that like if you want your content to do good, you better figure out what your hook is. Like if you're a hot girl, lean into it. If you're an idiot like me, say something controversial in the beginning, it'll catch them. But I think that essentially what you also touched on, the time to stamp. Back in the day, the algorithm was really peculiar. It wanted you to post within regions. You had to know like your time scales. Like you had to post it on Monday at 3 p.m., on Tuesday at 7 p.m. It did that for some reason. But now what I found is the algorithm that rolled out in January essentially goes, when do you post? When do you post your content? I post mine at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I find I'll post at 7. My regular followers will comment and do their thing on there, and then by the next morning overnight, the 9 a.m. crowd comes in and it blows up. So I found that like it's good for me to always post at 7, and I post it at 9 in the morning, and I can either post at 9 or 7. Those are the only two times that I see the videos consistently hit 2,000, 4,000. I had a few that go to 80,000, but those were very specific videos that I know why they did well. And there's a
Yeah.
structure there that I'm going to start leaning more into to refilm, to kind of like angle it to see if that algorithm is reading those like you said, those keywords, those timing, the sound. You have to like you almost got to be a scientist to figure this all out.
And I think as well as an artist who you create content to get your work out there, I think you got to not take it to heart as well. Like when something doesn't blow up, I try. It's so hard not to look at the numbers, but I try and just post the videos and not
Yeah.
look. like I'll respond to comments or whatever,
Yeah.
but just to not look, because there's no rhyme or reason as to sometimes, a video doesn't perform well, and one that does. You think you'll be spending extra time on an edit because you think this is a really important piece of content, and people are going to really vibe with it. But and that's the one that bombs, and the one that you just like chuck out there as a filler,
Every time.
that's the one that goes great. Yeah, yeah,
Every single time I've ever tried to do a content where I'm like really thinking about what I want to say and how I want it to look, those always fall. And the videos where I'm just being an idiot and yelling about something, they do well. And and also I've gotten myself into like arguments with people because I've misspoke because I didn't refine it, but that sometimes is just what people want. I don't know. I've never been able to figure that part out. That's like, why is it the videos that are really like
but
aesthetically pleasing don't
yeah,
click, but the ones where I'm just like in my
yeah,
underwear yelling are the ones that everyone's like, that's the content I want.
yeah. And I know it's funny. Sometimes I think that's actually a what do you call it, a cheat's way of getting engagement, to deliberately making mistakes in your video content. So people go, no, so and so wasn't born in that year, and
Yep.
that they're not Spanish, they're whatever, and
Gen
like just
Z.
deliberately throw in a mistake. So like you get all these comments of people
Yeah.
trying to correct you. Yeah,
I
and
see
one thing,
patterns in some content creators where they'll write something and then it's gibberish, like the sentence isn't a complete sentence. So what happens is you
yeah,
read it once, it's a 7-second video. By the time you get to the end, it doesn't make sense to you. So the video plays
yeah,
again because you're trying to read it, and that double view creates that
yeah.
video to go high. Like it's like weird trickery that people do. It's funny.
Yeah, yeah. I've got an idea for you. I've been thinking about playing around with it myself. Is like, how you've got the credits, not the credits, the subtitles coming up as you're talking, and to just like go in and alter some of those so they're not so that they're saying something different to what you're saying.
Yeah,
Just like, what did he just
100%.
say? Like, if you're reading it or whatever at the same time, I thought, oh, that could be a good little idea. But
That's
one
a
thing I
really
love about
it's a great idea. It's a great idea.
I'll be watching your content, see if you use it.
Oh,
But
I might have to use that.
but also the way you communicate as an artist on the videos, the way I think that your videos do really well is that you're inviting the audience in to participate in the conversation every time, and I think a lot of videos are a closed circuit. You've answered your own question. It's a video, blah blah blah. Whereas you are posing questions, you're asking things, you're making statements that invite people to talk. And I think that's also like that's a valuable skill. You said that was one of your skills, apart from being a really good painter, is that you have that talking skill to be able to invite people in.
Yeah, I think that the thing about me is it's like a Ted Laszlo quote where it's like I'm always curious. Like I'm always just what is going on? Do fish smell? What like I'm always just kind of like always curious what everyone's thought process is. So like I'm in my head most of the day. I think a lot. But essentially when I sit down to film something, the way I talk to the camera, and I've touched base on this before, is the way I would talk to you if you were sitting on my couch. And I think that what people don't realize is like the lights are low. I'm sitting here, I'm explaining like maybe a vulnerable thing, or I'm talking about like something I'm heated about, or what I'm like, oh, I'm explaining this painting. And I'm explaining it to like we're friends. And I'm not coming at this in a way that's like curated or I'm too cool. Like I'm an idiot and I don't like try to be the cool art kid. Like which I see a lot of artists do on here where they're like they don't know how to be anything other than the branded version of an artist, like in front of their work, like all peacocking, and that works for them. Don't get me wrong; I understand a gallery wants that type of thing, but I guarantee if any of those artists didn't have their original following that Instagram gave them, like for 10 or 15 years before, every one of them would struggle to be online and show their art, because that is lazy to me. That's like, to me, like, it's not social media anymore, it's niche media. And people
Mm.
want an experience. I'm here to entertain them. This is a stage. Here's my art. Let's have some fun. You can hate it. I also, like you said in my comments, I welcome people to shit on stuff. And I'm like, I'll agree. Like, yeah, this is boring. Why do you find it boring? Explain it to me. I agree with you, or I don't agree with you. I'm not like stagnant on here, and I don't think that we do any. I want it to be art is an exciting living thing to deal with, and we treat it like it's this tiger that's behind glass. And I don't want it to be that. I want you to touch the tiger. I want you to pull its tail. I want you to explain to me like what you see when you look at it. Because to me, when I go to a museum, I'm filled with all of this, and I want everyone else to also see the world the way I see it. I don't want to like heart a picture and carry on with my day. Fucking boring.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's cool. I really love your content, man. I've been so I was just really excited to have a chat with you and see where it all goes in the future. But yeah, I'll definitely be watching out for your stuff and love to have you on again sometime in the future if you're interested.
100%. I love it. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to the Fork in the Road podcast, or watching the Fork in the Road podcast. For those people watching on Patreon, we also have it as a video on Spotify and YouTube. If you like the idea of chatting with artists, talking about how you go from starving to thriving, how you become a successful artist, whatever that means to you, whatever a thriving artist means. If you like this kind of thing, you can support the podcast in many ways. Apart from becoming a Patreon, you can just share it with your friends, or you could leave a review on iTunes. I think iTunes do review. Whoever does reviews, if you look in your podcast channel, if it allows you to do a review, or if you're watching on YouTube, please comment, please like. And I won't be one of those podcasts that go, you got to give a 5-star review. If there's something about the podcast you don't like, let me know. Write it in the comments and see if I can, tweak it a little bit to make it work better for everybody. But yeah, 5-star review would be pretty awesome. But anyway, check you next time.